Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Code Endure, where we believe that learning software development is a journey and not a destination, as there's always something new to learn. My name is Dwayne Williams, and today I have another amazing HTML and CSS tutorial for you. Let's take a look at what we're going to be creating. So this is what we'll be creating. It's the header section of a landing page for a sneaker store. The components of this section are the navigation bar, where we have the navigation, we have the logo, the navigation with some simple hover effects. We also have this headline text here. We have this call to action button with a hover effect as well. And we have this cool animation. Take a look at it. Each time the door closes, a new shoe appears. And also, the background on the right side here changes the color to complement the picture that is shown. Look at it. I think that is amazing. Without further ado, let's begin. So we'll start off by creating a new folder within our workspace. I called mine Sneaker Landing Page. Then open that folder in your favorite IDE. For my purpose, I'll be using Visual Studio Code. Now within that folder, create a new file called index.html. We'll create a folder for our CSS. We'll also create a folder for our images. Within our CSS folder, create a file called main.css. And then let's now start to work on our HTML. So within our HTML document, just write the word HTML and select HTML5. For the title, we'll say sneakers. And within the body, we'll start to build out our header section. So that's header. Within header, we'll have a nav. Within the nav, we'll have a div with a class of logo. And just write logo for now. We'll replace that with an image later. We'll also create another div called navlinks. And within navlinks, we'll create a few anchor tags. So create some anchor tags. Hashtag for the href because they won't go anywhere for this tutorial. And give it a class called navlinks. The first one will be men, and then we'll copy it down 3 more times. The second one would be women. Third, kids. Fourth, about. That's our navigation. Underneath our navigation, we will have the section that will have our headline and the animation image. So create a div with a class called info. And then we'll have a left side and a right side. In the div with the class of left, we'll have a headline text. So that would be a H1. And then the text will be limited edition sneakers. Underneath that H1, we'll create a button with a class of btn. And the text will be shop now. The right side will hold our image, but we'll come back to this later. So let's preview what we have so far. Nice. Now we'll begin to work on our CSS. So create a link to our CSS. So that's within our CSS folder, main.css. The first thing we'll do in our CSS file is to import our font. I'm using Google Fonts. Next, I'll reset the browser defaults. So I'll set the browser margin to 0, padding to 0, text decoration none, and box size into border box. I also like to create variables for my colors that I reuse a lot. So I'll just do that. So I'll target the root and create the variables. So that's color, primary, and that would be hashtag 0B0442. I'll also have a secondary color. So that's color dash secondary. And that would be hashtag EDB100. And the final one will be our accent color. So that's color accent. And that's hashtag FFF2D5. Next, let's set our overall font size. So we target HTML tag and set the font size to 62.5%. I usually do this so I can have one rem equaling to 10 pixels. By default, one rem is 16 pixels, and 62.5% of 16 will result in one rem being 10 pixels. We'll also set the overall font family to Roboto, which is our Google font. And the fallback will be sans serif. Now let's take a look at that. All right. We'll also set the font family for H1. So that's H1, font family. And we're using Orbitron. So that's Orbitron. And the fallback is sans serif as well. So let's resize this a bit. And continue working on our CSS. So I'll minimize this. And the next section will be to target our header section. So that's header. We'll give it a width of 100%. We'll give it a height of 100 viewport height. We'll give it a background color. And we'll use our variable. And we'll use the accent color. So that's color accent. All right. Let's work on the navigation a little bit. So that's nav. Give the nav a display of flex. So it can be into one row. We'll give it a width of 100%. We'll give it a height of 3 rem. We'll align the items center. I will give it a background color of primary. So we'll use our variable dash dash color dash primary. Not primary, secondary, sorry. Secondary. Spell secondary wrong, so that should be secondary. All right. We will also give it a padding of 4 rem top and bottom and 5 rem left and right. So next we'll style these navigation links. So let's work on that. So those are in this div here with a class of navlinks, and each of them has a class of navlink. Oh, this should be navlink, sorry. So that should be navlink. We will style these. So go back to our CSS. I will go nav, target the nav links. So that's the main container. I will give it a width of 100%. We'll give it a font size of 2 rems. Next, we'll target each individual link. So those are the anchor tag with the class of navlink. So let's target those. So we'll go navlink. We'll select the navlinks. And then we'll select the navlink. I will give them a margin right of 4 rem. So give them some space between each other. We will also set the color to the primary color, which is our blue. There we go. Now, let's bring in our logo. We will go ahead and copy the images that we have into this folder. I already prepared the images ahead of time, so I'll just go ahead and copy them over. These images I took from unsplash.com. I just renamed them for the project. So I'll just show you. So you can go to Unsplash. So I'll create a new tab and search for Unsplash. And the website is unsplash.com, where you can get free images. Then I just search for sneakers. So this is where I got these images from. So I just downloaded them. So you click on it, and then you'll see download free. You download it, and then I renamed it, and I'm using it for the project. Please note also that they are not optimized for the web. If this was a project that would be hosted on the web, I'd have to optimize them to get a smaller size for them. All right. So you'll get the images from Unsplash. Copy them to the project. I'll also leave a link in the description to the Git repo. If you want to use the images that are already downloaded, you can just pull it from the Git repo and bring it into your project as well. So go back over to our HTML. And where we have this text that says logo, we'll put an image tag. And for the source, it will be img/logo.png. So now we have our logo within our page. Let's now style our logo. So that will be in our nav. And we'll grab the div with the class of logo. We'll set the width to 8 rem. Next, we need to target the image itself. So we'll go nav, target the logo class, and then target the image and give this a width of 100% so it can fit into the logo container. So as you can see, the logo has been resized. Now we need to create some space between the logo and this side of the navigation. So we'll give this a margin right of 6 rem. Just to give it some breathing space between the logo and the navigational links. The last thing we need to do for a navigation bar is to set the hover state for these navigation links. So now we're hovering. Only thing that's happening is the cursor changing. So let's add a little bit more effect to these. Underneath the style for a nav link, we select the nav link again. So nav links, nav link. And this time we'll select the after pseudo selector. Give it a content of empty string. We'll give it a absolute position. So that's position absolute. And because we're giving this a absolute position, we have to give this one a relative position. So position relative. We'll give it a width of 100%. We'll give it a height of 0.3 rem. A background color, and we'll use our primary color for this as well. So that's color primary. We will set the bottom to 0 so that these can move beneath the text, and also the left to 0. The next thing we need to do is create some space between the text and the underline. So we'll go margin bottom. And we're going to give this a negative margin to pull it down. So that's negative 0.5 rem. Just to pull it off a little bit, just to create some space. We could increase it so you can see, so give it some more space. Now, this effect we want to have happen when we hover over the links and not the default state. So to do that, we'll set this to 0 that we just created, so it doesn't show in our normal state. And then we'll copy this here and paste underneath. And then for the nav link, when it is hovered, so we'll give it a hover state, we want the width to become 100%. So we'll set the width to 100% here. And then when we hover it, you'll now see it. Nice. Next, let's set a transition on this element. So we'll go transition all 0.2 seconds, just to give it a more dramatic effect. So you see, we can see it moving in from the left to the right. Now that's it for our navigation. We'll now move on to styling our headline and our call to action button. For our headline and call to action button, those are located within the header element inside a div called info and within another div called left. So we'll go ahead and style these divs here. Let's go back over to our CSS and we'll select our info div. So that's header info. We'll give it a width of 100%. We will also give it a height of 100%. Take up the remainder of the header container. We'll give it a display of flex. I will give it a left padding of 5 rem. Next, let's style the left side of the info div. So that's header info left. We'll give it a width of 45%, as we only want this to take up 45% of the info div. We'll give it a height of 100%. We'll set the display to flex. We'll set the flex direction to column. We'll justify content center to center it vertically. Let's now start to style the H1. So that's header info left H1. Want to give this a font size of 11 rem. Now let's move on to styling our button. So we'll go all the way up to the top. Let's put the style underneath this H1 here. So we'll target our BTN class. We'll give it a width of 25 rem. We'll give it a height of 8 rem. Set the text to uppercase, so that's text transform, uppercase. We'll give it a font size of 2 rem. We'll set the cursor to pointer. I will give it a border radius of 1 rem. Nice. We also want to remove this border from around it, so set the border to none. Give it a flat look. The next thing we want to do is to set the color for the button. So what I'll do is I'll give it another class called primary. So let's locate the button. So button, so we'll give it a BTN primary. Then we'll add the color to that. So underneath this, we'll go BTN primary, and we give it the color. We'll give it a background color, sorry. We'll use the primary color. So that's color primary. We'll also set the color of the text to the secondary color. So that's color secondary. Give it some letter spacing of about 0.5 rem. Yeah, that's good. I will set the font weight to bold. There we go. Let's also go ahead and create the hover state. For the hover state, let's just copy this down and give it a state of hover. So that's hover. And what we'll do is we'll cut this from here. So we'll set the text color to blue, to the primary blue, and the background color to the secondary. We can remove these from here. Let's see. There we go. We can also give it a border. So we can go border 0.2 rem, solid, and use the primary color. Oh, this should not be on the header. Made a mistake. So let's cut that and paste it here. There we go. And that's it. Now we can move on working on the right side. Let's do that. I'll just extend this some more. For the right hand side, let's start by adding our images. So go over back to our HTML, and within this right div, we will create a div with a class called image wrapper. And within this div, we'll create some image tags. So the source will be image, and we'll get our sneaker image. So we'll go sneaker 1. And for the alt tag, we'll put sneaker 1. We can then copy this down 3 times because we have 4 of them, and then rename these. So this will be 2, this will be 3, and this will be 4. So if we go over to our page, we can see the images. So these are images. Now, let's work on styling these. So go to our CSS. So we'll go underneath the style that we had for the left side, which is here, and we'll begin to style the right side. So that's header, info, right. We'll give this a width of 50%. Give it a height of 100%. Let's grab the image wrapper. So that's header, info, right, image wrapper. I will give this a width of 100%, a height of 70%. We also need to size the images themselves. Let's copy this. And then add the img tag. I will give it, the image is a width of 100%. I will set the height, we'll set the aspect ratio. Let's use aspect ratio of 1. Give it a object fit of cover. And this should be the img class. All right. Next thing we want to do is on our header. Let's find our header. Let's set the overflow to hidden. So that's overflow hidden. All right. Let's start positioning these images. We'll give the image a position of absolute. And because we give it a position of absolute, we need to give its parent, which is the image wrapper here, a position of relative. So that's position relative. There we go. Let's now center this image vertically by going to the right section and giving it a display of flex and align the items center. There we go. Now let's start to work on the animation to transition between the various images that we have for the sneakers. The first thing we need to do is to create that door or curtain. I don't know what to call it. I'm going to call it a sliding door for this tutorial. Let's work on that door. To create the door, we will use the before and after pseudo selector for the image wrapper. So we'll go header. Let's just copy this. Paste it here. And then we'll use the before. Give it a content of empty string. Give it a width of 50% because it's going to be two. There will be a left side and a right side. Each of them will take up a width of 50%. We'll give it a height of 100%. Give it a background color. And we'll use the accent color for this. So that's var color accent. We also need to give it a position of absolute. Set the left to 0 and the top to 0. We're still not seeing it. So let's set the Z index because it's likely in the back. So let's give it a high Z index. Let's say, let's try 100. There it is. The image seems to be overflowing a bit here. So let's see if we can set the overflow to hidden, if that will fix it. So let's go overflow hidden on the image wrapper. Nice. That takes care of that. Now let's set the right hand side of this door. So we'll copy this down. Change this to after. And instead of left, we'll set right. There we go. And just to show you that we have the door, I'll just go ahead and change these colors. So I'll give this a color of, I'll just choose a random color. Let's use this. And for the left side, let's use this. So as you can see, we have two rectangles, one on the left, one on the right. This is what is going to create that animation of a door opening and closing. Let's now proceed to start working on that animation. To create this animation, we will be using keyframes. So I'll just go to the bottom of my CSS and start creating these keyframes. So let's go add keyframe. And we need to give the keyframe a name. Let's use sliding doors. Sliding door. I will set 0%. So at 0%, 0%, we want the width to be 50. And then at 100%, we will set the width to 0. This is just to demonstrate. These are not our final figures, just to demonstrate. And then for the door, which is the left and the right, we'll set the animation. So that's animation. We'll use a shorthand. Give it the animation name. We'll set the duration. So I'll use 8 seconds. Linear. And for it to loop, we'll put infinite. So we'll continuously loop. Next, we'll copy this line, this animation, and place it within the image wrapper with the after pseudo selector. And there we have it. That's the animation of the door. But we want the door to open and close within the same animation. So we'll have to adjust the keyframe for that. Let's go ahead and do that. So at 0%, we want it to be 50. Then at around 15%, we need the door to be entirely open. So we'll go with 0. So it opens a bit faster. Then at around 90%, this is the duration, 90% of the duration of the animation. We want it to go back to 50. So it will simulate the door closing, right? Look at that. We also want to keep the door open a little bit longer. As you can see, as it opens, it starts to close. What we can do is from 15 to 80%, we'll say that we want the door to stay open. So that's 80% here. So you see, 15 to 80, it stays open, then it begins to close. Let's add 100% here. So from 0, so 0% of the animation, the door is closed. Then at the 15% mark, it's open. And from 15 to 80%, it stays open. Then at the 90% mark, it closes. And these percentages are measured based on the time the animation takes. So you can look at it at 0% of 8 seconds, at 15% of 8 seconds, at 80% of 8 seconds, 90% of 8 seconds. These actions will occur. Next, what we can work on is the transition of the images. So let's work on changing these images as the door closes. So let's create a keyframe for changing the sneakers. So underneath this keyframe, we'll create another keyframe and we'll call it sneaker change. So we'll go sneaker change. For the sneakers, what we'll be animating is their opacity. So let's set the initial state for their opacity before we add the keyframes. So I'll just go up top underneath where we have the image here, and I'll begin to set their opacities. So we'll locate the image and set the opacity to 0. Then we can start setting the keyframe to animate the opacity. So we'll scroll all the way back down, and then at 0%, we want the opacity to be 1. Then at 100%, we can set the opacity back to 0. So opacity back to 0. Let's add this animation to the image. So if you remember, we have 4 images, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we want to animate them independently. So as a result, we can use the nth child to select them individually so we can give them their different animations. So let's use this selector here, copy this, and we'll get the first image by using nth child. So that's nth child 1. This is TH. We'll set the animation to, what did we call it? Sneaker change. We'll give it 8 seconds. Linear. Infinite. Now, as you can see, as the door opens, the sneaker begins to fade. That's not the effect that we want. We want when the door opens, the sneaker stays 100% opacity, and then when it closes, it fades and changes into the other one. Let's work on that. So we'll go back down to the sneaker change, and here we're saying between 0 and 100%, we're going from 1 to 0. So what we can do is, for the sliding door, the door stays open up to 80%. So we can say from 0 to 80%, the sneaker should have opacity of 1. So the next thing that we will need to do is to introduce another sneaker when the door closes and reopens. To accomplish that, we'll target another pair of sneakers. Let's copy this down and set 2. So as you see, we have the other sneaker on top of the first one, but that's not the effect that we want. We want this to come in after the first one fades out. So the first one stays for 8 seconds. So what we need to do is to set a delay for this of 8 seconds. So this should start after this one fades. So now we have 2 sneakers within the animation. This one comes in 8 seconds after the first one. So as a result, the animation is now 16 seconds. So we need to set the duration for both animations to 16 seconds. So this should be 16 and this should be 16. There we go. The entire animation for the sneaker change is now 16 seconds. So now the sneakers should only stay active for 50% because we want it to stay active for 8 seconds, and 50% is half of 16, which gives us the 8. So we'll change this to 50. Then immediately after the 50%, we want it to go back to 0. So the other image with the delay can show. So we'll set this to 51. So as you can see, each time the door closes, the other image shows. Nice. So let's go ahead and add the other images into the animation. So we'll just copy this down 2 more times. And this will be 3 and 4. Now that we have 4 images on the same animation, and each time the door closes is 8 seconds, we need the animation now to last 4 times 8, which is 32 seconds. So let's go ahead and change these. So these should be 32. So that's 32 seconds. So the first one starts immediately. The second one starts 8 seconds after the first one. And this one, which is the third one, it should start 16 seconds after the first one. So that's 16. And the last one should start another 8 seconds additionally. So that would be 24 seconds later. We have 4 sneakers that changes between each other over a duration of 32 seconds. The door opens and closes over a duration of 8 seconds. This means that we want each sneaker to have an opacity of 1 for 8 seconds, which amounts to 25% of the 32-second sneaker change animation. Let's now make those changes to our sneaker change keyframes. Nice. So that is our animation. So we have one more animation to create, and then we'll be complete with our animations. The final animation that we have to create is the shape that we had here that changes color each time the image changes. So we'll go ahead now and create that shape, and then we'll create the animation for it. To create that shape, we'll target the header right side and use the before pseudo selector. So let's scroll up to where we had the right side, which is here. So we'll copy this, paste here. We'll use the before pseudo selector. Set the content to empty string. Set the width to 80 rem. We can give it a background color for now. The color will be animated, so this is not necessary, but just so we can have a visual representation, we'll just give it a background color. Let's use the secondary color. So that's color secondary. We also give it a position of absolute. Give it a top of 0. We want it on the right side, so we'll give it a right also of 0. Give it a bottom of 0 as well. Let's now use the clip path property to give it the shape that we want. So I already have it, so I'll just paste it in. And you can see we have this diagonal rectangle shape. For the clip path, I usually go to a website and generate it. Let me show you the website that I use. So I'll just go in the browser and just type in clip path generator. And then I use this website here. So I'll click on it. And you can use these to basically create the shape that you want. Or you can select from a predefined shapes over here, parallelogram, and then you can modify it as you want as well. And then after you are finished modifying your clip path, you can just copy the code from here and paste it into your HTML document. So that's how I create the clip path. We can now move on to working on the animation for this. So let's scroll all the way down and create the keyframes. We'll start off by creating a keyframe called color change. Then for this keyframe, we're going to be changing between 4 different colors over a 32 seconds period. And we want each color to last a quarter of the time, which is 8 seconds. So from 0% to 24%, that's one color. Then it will change on the 25th percent, right? So let's set the background color to hashtag F9C301. Now it will change at 25%, so we'll have 25%. And then it will keep this next color up to 49%. And the background color for this is hashtag 023452. And then at 50%, it will change again. So 50%. And it will keep this one up to 74%. And then we have another background color, which is hashtag B9C1FD. And then finally, it will change again at 75% and keep this color up to 100%. And the background color for this is hashtag E3 B572. Go all the way up to our shape. And I will give it the animation property. So that's animation. Name of the animation. The duration of the animation, which is 32 seconds. We want it to run linear. And we want it to loop. So that will be infinite. There we go. So as you can see, each time the door closes, the background color here changes. Last thing we can do is fix this final animation here where you're seeing we have a conflict between the final image and the first image. So let's see if we can identify why. All right, so to fix that, we can just add 25% here. So from 25% onwards, it will have an opacity of 0. We just need to add a few more finishing touches and we're complete. The first thing we need to do is for these doors, we need to set them back to the accent color. I'll go ahead and copy this up to the before. And then we can also give the entire image wrapper a box shadow just to lift it off the background. So that's box shadow. 002 rem and the RGBA of black 000 with a opacity of 0.2. So that pulls it off the background a little bit. Finally, there's a background image that I want to add to the entire header section just to give it a little bit more volume. So let's go ahead and add that. So go to our HTML. Right underneath our opening header tag, we'll create a div with a class of BG. Let's now create the CSS styling for that. So locate header. Underneath our header, we say header, get the BG, set width to 100%, height to 100%, position absolute. We'll now set the image, so we'll go background, URL, and the image, we go up to our image folder, img, and that's a lady sitting. We'll give this no repeat. Set the background size to cover, reduce the opacity to 0.05. We can give it a blend mode, so we'll go mix blend mode of multiply, and we can reposition the image just a little bit. So we'll go background, position, Y, and we set that to bottom. And that is it. So this is our final header section of a landing page. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and I hope you were able to learn something from it. Thanks for checking out the channel and see you next time.